Hello and welcome back to my video series on giftedness. My name is Elke, and if you haven't seen the introduction yet, you can click the link in the description below and get caught up on this video series and on who I am. Today I'm going to talk about giftedness and fear of failure. There are several things that a lot of gifted people have in common when it comes to their high potential for success. A lot of them have very excellent memory skills, so they are able to retain information without spending a lot of time or effort to remember it. A lot of them think very quickly, which means that they are ahead of everybody when figuring something out. Many of them have very well developed analytical skills. They are creative thinkers who can think of solutions for complex problems by getting to the point of the matter very efficiently. And finally, a lot of them are extremely curious people. They are hungry for more information and they will actively seek out the gaps in their knowledge, while other people might have to be more stimulated to do so. These traits are very obvious very early on. So early in their school careers, gifted children already stand out on these things compared to their age peers. This means in school settings, they are supposed to do very well. They are supposed to be able to learn their schoolwork quickly, efficiently, and do extremely well on tests. Later in life, this also means that they are supposed to be very successful because of their drive and because of their curiosity. As a gifted child grows up, it is obviously noticed for their potential. And the way that potential usually shows itself is by the lack of effort required to hit the mark. People will notice how little effort they need in order to do well in school. And it is precisely this lack of effort that sets them up for these very high expectations from everybody else. Because if you can do this without any effort, imagine what you can do once you put your energy in it. Gifted children often receive a lot of praise for their effortless achievements. And they will often hear, "You are so smart because you don't even have to try, and you already succeed." The effortless achievement of gifted children going to a school often feeds into what's known as the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset and the growth mindset, which is the opposite, are both ways of thinking about human abilities and human ability to learn. And the fixed mindset really says that there are certain sets of talents that a person might have, and a set of talents that they don't have. And there is a real black and white distinction of what you are naturally able to do and what you are naturally unable to do. And trying to do things that are not among your talents is really kind of pointless because you will never really be good at it. So the fixed mindset really sees failure as a sign of, well, maybe this skill doesn't belong to your talents, so maybe you should just forget about it. So at the direct opposite of the fixed mindset, there is the growth mindset. The growth mindset does not assume that people have a toolbox of talents to work from. The growth mindset really says that you should be able to do whatever you want, as long as you put in enough effort to do so. Mistakes are signs that you haven't acquired the skill yet, and that you need to put in more effort in order to acquire it. The fixed mindset says achievement is the most important thing because it shows what a person is capable of. And the growth mindset says, no, effort is the most important thing because that really shows you how much energy a person has in order to better themselves. Someone who adheres to the growth mindset will look at a gifted child going to school and think, well, that's not very hard. You haven't put in any effort at all. Sure, you achieve very highly, but what have you really done? While somebody who has the fixed mindset will look at the gifted child and say, well, you're brilliant. You just do all of these things without even extending the effort to achieve them. that's fantastic, you are so talented and you are so smart. Simply because they don't have to work to achieve well, that means that they are intelligent. If they would have to work for it, that would mean that they are less intelligent. And for gifted people, especially gifted kids who struggle with identity issues, being smart becomes a core part of their identity, because that's how everybody keeps seeing them. Of course, if you don't work for your grades, you don't really learn. So gifted children are rewarded for not learning anything during school. And then, after elementary school, comes high school. The workload suddenly spikes. Homework increases, exams become more challenging, there are just so many more subjects, there is a lot more information to consume. A gifted child going through school effortlessly has never learned anything. They don't know how to study. So they suddenly start failing exams because they don't have a strategy to pass them. They are used to simply passively consuming the information that is presented to them, then just magically do well. And as they start failing, as they start getting bad grades in because they don't know how to put in effort, they are suddenly seen in a very different light. Some people see them as being lazy because they refuse to work. And there is a massive disappointment because this child who has such talent and such promise cannot get a passing grade for their subjects. Somebody who gets a failing grade and has the fixed mindset, they see the failure and they suddenly question whether they are even able to do this at all. Some gifted children, for this reason, they start dropping to lower forms of education with less challenge and with less work. And that means that they are woefully underachieving, but that is the world that they know. The fixed mindset really sets people up not just for a certain way of effortless thinking about achievements, but also for a lot of pressure. As gifted children go to high school and start failing their exam, they are very keenly aware of who has different expectations for them. Their teachers expected different from them. Their parents did. They themselves did. Some gifted children go to high school with a very clear idea of where they want to go in the future. And as they fail their grades, suddenly that future is in peril. It is very difficult to bounce back from that. Every single exam becomes massively important, becomes a new opportunity to prove your worth or fail it. And the fixed mindset, along with the helplessness for achieving well on tests, together feed test anxiety. A lot of people get nervous about tests and are then driven to do better. Test anxiety is a full-on panic attack brought on by exams and tests. It's not motivating, it doesn't sharpen your senses, it just distracts you during the test. And it distracts people to the point that they forget everything that they learned. For gifted people, this is especially frustrating and especially harrowing. What does it mean for a gifted person who knows that they have a talent for things, who knows that all of these people have such high expectations for their future? What does it mean to them to then fail a simple high school exam? So the catastrophic thinking about every single exam, because every single exam becomes a measurement point where a gifted person feels that they are judged and they are judged as a person. The catastrophic thinking feeds the panic attack during an exam. And especially when they feel the nerve set in and they fear the fear itself. And of course, as with many phobias, the more you fear it, the more intense the experience becomes. So as soon as a gifted person starts experiencing test anxiety, it very often snowballs out of control very, very quickly. A lot of non-gifted students also experience test anxiety, so most people are familiar in one way or another what it means to be anxious for tests. While the test anxiety is a very phobic and isolated panic attack, gifted people have similar fears when it comes to more generalized performance anxiety. Whenever they are put to a task that has a potential for failure, there will also be catastrophic thinking involved. How many people do I disappoint if I fail here? Will I look stupid to everybody if I fail here? And the extreme discomfort that this causes shies people away from taking on challenges at all. So this anxiety, again, leads to woeful underperformance. And it's serious because it affects gifted people throughout their life. They are simply too afraid to face failure and live up to their potential. So for fear of failure and test anxiety, there are several factors involved other than just the fixed mindset that is very common for gifted people. I've already outlined some here and there, but I want to just really outline them clearly because there are a lot of factors that make the situation a lot worse. First, there is a thinking style that is common among a certain type of gifted person, and that's rumination. The ability of searching for cause and effects and really follow the chain of events into the future causes these people to really get carried away with their thinking. And as soon as they start to get worried about something, it also means that they are unable to stop the chain of events and the chain of thoughts from going into catastrophic territory. So the catastrophic thinking that I mentioned earlier when explaining the severity of test anxiety is something that is common for a particular type of gifted person. So it's not something that is a coincidence here. Secondly, a lot of gifted people experience emotions very intensely. In fact, it's commonly said that giftedness can act like a magnifying glass for human experience. So some gifted people feel their anxiety as panic. For these intensely sensitive people, test anxiety and fear of failure become more consuming than they already are for anybody else. I've already mentioned in a previous video how alienation works and how alienation is a common theme in the lives of gifted people. Alienation has an effect on the formation of your identity. It makes your identity less stable because you don't hear from a lot of people how they feel about you. So you don't feel that your identity gets consistently reflected back to you. One thing that a lot of gifted people hear over and over again is that they are intelligent. So their intelligence and their talent become one of the most stable features that they get reflected back. And that adds to the pressure and the disappointment that they feel that they put everybody else through when they fail. Finally, gifted people often find themselves in a very frustrating position once they are held back by their fear of failure. Gifted people often have a very keen insight into problems of society, and with their creative thinking styles, they are likely to come up with solutions that would really help people. If they are aware of that, and a lot of them aren't, but if they are aware of that and held back by their fear of failure, that is an extremely frustrating position to be in. You are sitting on the answer to problems. you don't have the tools to speak up. So fear of failure has many effects on many gifted people in many environments. Some are subtle and some are explosive. It is important to keep in mind that in order to learn how to deal with fear of failure and in order to move past it, you definitely have to bite the bullet and learn to fail. Because the anxiety is only fed by avoidance. And this is very easily said. It is very difficult to do. Especially because exposure to phobia can become traumatic when it's not handled well. In order to not have it backfire on you in a traumatic experience, it is important for you to find somebody to support you through the process. It would be helpful to find somebody who really understands the scale of your anxiety and of your phobia. But more than that, it is important to find somebody who really knows how to handle phobic reactions so that they can support you through this intense experience. I hope that this video has been helpful to explain the severity of the fear of failure for gifted people. If you are struggling with this issue, I hope that I have been able to explain that, again, you are not alone. It is possible to get out of it. It's not easy. And I encourage you to find the help you need in order to work past it. I hope you will be taking care of yourself, and I will see you in my next video next time. Take care.